Jake Thornton was no stranger to the long, lonely nights of the open road. As a seasoned truck driver, he'd seen it all: storms that lashed against his windshield, wildlife darting across the highway, and once, even a UFO sighting in the Nevada desert. But nothing could have prepared him for what he encountered at the Jamestown truck stop in New Mexico. It was a clear autumn evening, and Jake had been driving for the better part of the day. He was well within his HOS limits, with plenty of time to rest before continuing his haul to California. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake spotted the familiar neon sign of the Pilot Travel Center glowing in the distance, a beacon of comfort in the otherwise desolate landscape. He pulled into the lot and found a spot near the edge, away from the few other trucks that were already parked. After checking his logbook, Jake decided to take a quick walk to stretch his legs before grabbing some dinner. As he stepped out of the cab, he noticed something odd, a sense of stillness in the air, as if the world was holding its breath. The truck stop was quiet, almost too quiet. The usual sounds of engines idling and truckers chatting were absent. As Jake walked toward the entrance, he passed by an old, beat-up rig parked in the corner of the lot. It looked like it hadn't moved in years, covered in dust and grime, with rust eating away at the metal. The sight of it gave Jake an uneasy feeling, but he shook it off and continued inside. The convenience store was nearly empty, save for the lone cashier who greeted him with a nod. Jake grabbed a sandwich and a coffee, then headed back outside to eat in the fresh air. As he sat on the hood of his truck, he noticed something strange: an old man standing by the dilapidated rig he'd passed earlier. The man was tall and thin, with a gaunt face that seemed to have seen more than its fair share of hard times. He wore a faded trucker's cap, pulled low over his brow, and his clothes were worn and tattered. The man's eyes, though, were what caught Jake's attention. They were dark, almost black, and seemed to hold a deep, unfathomable sadness. Jake was about to call out to him when the old man suddenly turned and started walking toward the edge of the lot, heading in the direction of the highway. Curious, and feeling a strange pull, Jake decided to follow him. The man walked slowly, his steps deliberate, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Jake kept a safe distance, not wanting to spook him, but as they approached the highway, the man suddenly stopped. They were standing near mile marker 129, a spot that Jake had passed countless times but never given much thought to. The old man turned to Jake, his expression grave. "This is where it happened," he said, his voice raspy and filled with sorrow. Jake frowned. "What happened?" The man pointed to the road. "I was on my last haul, just like you. A long night, no sleep, but I was pushing through. I had to make the delivery on time. I was almost here when I dozed off, just for a second." His voice cracked, and he looked down at his hands, which were trembling. Jake's heart sank as he began to understand. You were in an accident?" The man nodded. "Fell asleep at the wheel. When I woke up, it was too late. My rig went off the road, rolled over. I didn't make it." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at the man's truck, parked back in the lot. "But, how are you here now?" The old man's eyes met Jake's, and there was a deep, haunting sadness in them. "I never left. I'm stuck here, reliving that night over and over, trying to warn others. But no one listens. They just drive by, thinking they're invincible, until it's too late." Jake swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He wanted to say something, to offer some kind of comfort, but words failed him. The old man took a step closer, his gaze intense. "Listen to me, son. Don't push yourself too hard. No deadline is worth your life. When you feel tired, stop. Rest. Don't end up like me." Jake nodded, his throat tight. "I won't. I promise." The old man gave him a sad smile, then turned and walked back toward his truck. As he reached it, he faded into the night, disappearing into the darkness as if he had never been there at all. Shaken, Jake returned to his truck, his mind racing. He climbed into the cab and sat there for a long time, staring out at the highway. The old man's words echoed in his mind, a stark reminder of the dangers of the road. That night, Jake made a vow. He would always respect his limits, always rest when he needed to, no matter what. Because now he knew, there were worse things than missing a deadline. And some roads were haunted by more than just the memories of those who had traveled them before. As he pulled out of the truck stop and continued his journey, Jake glanced in his rearview mirror. The old, beat-up rig was still there, sitting silently in the corner of the lot. But the old man was gone, leaving only the chilling memory of his warning behind. Jake didn't know if he'd ever see the ghost of mile marker 129 again, but he knew one thing for sure, he would never forget the lesson he had learned that night.